everyone. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone. Here at NYU School of Professional Studies, we've been contemplating how we could be helping community deal with the new working environment we're in, or teaching or learning environment. And we decided that we are going to offer something to learn that will help you make your way toward that, the future. And just to give you a little bit of an idea where this came from, Stella Lupushoor is our instructor in Human Capital Analytics and Technology program. And she developed a course and is teaching a course in digital workplace design. And so what you're going to experience in this first part of the series, in the 3 series that we are going to offer in April, is something that the students in Stella's class have developed very successfully and had a lot of fun with it. And there's a very, very pragmatic goal for us here to help you develop the skills, help you deal with the situation we're in. And we're going to hear some stories of not only how to do it, but also what are potential applications and how to make your lives easier. So at this note, this is my part. I am Anna Tavis. I'm the academic director for the programs at NYU. And I welcome Stella to launch us into this exciting part of the program.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you everybody who made the time to join us. This is the first of many to come. We're starting with a series of 3 sessions where we'll do different deep dives into the cognitive AI, conversational AI. So this is an opportunity to learn how to build a chatbot, that learn the basics and constructs that inform the development of a chatbot, and then give you the opportunity to practice it by building your own. There are a lot of different technology solutions that enable you to do that, but we're thrilled to have a few options, and one of them specifically is Querlo, which is a very user-friendly, intuitive interface to build chatbots, and we will learn and practice the development using Querlo. The next following sessions will be focused on integrating with other downstream systems. Some of it will be focused on the sentiment analysis, so that will be dedicated, the April 9 session will be dedicated to that, and then April 16 will be integrating with apps for personal use like a Spotify, or with internal HRIS systems. So it builds on each other. In between, we will have a Slack community where we can continue to ask questions, share, brag with our creative solutions that we come up with, and continue to foster this sense of community and learning and sharing. So with that, a few ground rules. Please comment, ask questions via chat. I'll be monitoring as we progress through the session. Be nice to fellow participants, follow all the social norms you would follow in a class. Most important is you practice and get your hands dirty with technology. That's the only way to learn how to do it, and then have fun with it. Don't try to overthink it. With that, let me introduce your reframers. So Anna already introduced herself. I am also part of the program, the Human Capital Analytics and Technology program, and adjunct there. I also consult on workplace design, inclusive workplace design. And I'm thrilled to welcome Francesco Rulli, who is the CEO of Querlo and has been at the forefront of making the life of all the wannabes and data scientists who want to build conversational AI easy, as well as Sofia Vizitiu, who is a chatbot developer. She was previously with IBM, was training Watson how to speak, so to speak, and now she's with Pipestream and continuing to do the same. And I would like to first just have a few thoughts from each of the panel members on why did we want to start with conversational AI? And I'll share my opinion. I believe that conversational AI is really a way to hide the complexity of the workplace and integrate different experiences along the employment journey with a very easy dialogue and easy way to navigate it. I do believe that digital is here to stay. I think we've seen how a majority of at least knowledge workers were able to move virtual overnight, pretty much. And I don't think the new normal will resemble the way it used to be. I think we'll continue to do a lot more work virtually. So this is just an opportunity for us to build up that knowledge and experiment with some of the new technologies that are coming to the workplace.
I can go next. I think, so I'm Sophia. Nice to meet you, everyone. I think for me, one of the primary goals or functions of conversational AI can be to facilitate information sharing and just get people the information they need right now and point people in the direction that they need to go to do various operations. So in a time like now, when, you know, crisis lines are flooded, there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there. People don't necessarily know what to take seriously, or even how to decompose legislation like the CARES Act. I think the quicker that we can stand up conversational solutions that provide information quickly and, you know, don't require live human intervention, so we can save the human beings for like real emergencies, the better we are as a whole to respond to crises like this one.
All right, so I'll share my thoughts about AI. I have been utilizing conversational artificial intelligence since 2015. And I have realized it's an extremely powerful tool to empower people to achieve their aspirations. And later I will explain in more details why it is. But my experience started basically on a big challenge I had. It was educating thousands of young women in Afghanistan, where we financed the construction of 13 classrooms. And once we lost control of those classrooms, conversational artificial intelligence became the best tool we could use. And obviously we empowered them as much as they empowered us, because I realized very soon that you don't measure intelligence by the amount of information you know, but your capacity to learn from others. And that's what artificial intelligence, specifically conversational artificial intelligence, allows us today, is to educate and be educated, and it's a give and take relationship in which improves our capacity to improve ourselves. That's all.
Excellent. So I will stop sharing and hand over the baton to Sophia, who can take us on the journey and the basics of what conversational AI is all about.
All right. Can everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay, awesome.
But not the slides. It's just the background, the beautiful mountain.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yes.
Let me stop sharing and reshare.
I just wanted to add on everything that you guys have mentioned, since I'm not into the conversational AI and I have no experience from before. But as you guys said, that we shifted very quickly into the conversational AI basically overnight. I would say that right now, for the first time, we can see that we have been using internet for its main purpose, like the purpose it probably internet was made for, which is like being a tool through which we can share information, basically. And then like now it's put into the right place. And this is, I would say, kind of the silver lining in all this crazy thing that has been happening lately. So yeah.
Exactly.
Are you now able to see slides?
Nope.
All right. Stella, I might have to ask you. I've run into this issue when trying to share Google Slides
I will
in
find
Zoom previously. I put my slides in the folder we established.
Yep.
So,
I'm going there. So if you want to just kick it off, I will meanwhile pull the slides.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Sophia. Stella mentioned I am an AI solution designer. I started off at IBM where I used various Watson tools to build out conversational solutions for clients. And I'm now at Pipestream doing similar work. I've been at it for about 2.5 years, and my background is in linguistics. So I'm excited to share some of what I've learned along the way. Any luck with the slides?
They're coming up.
That's all I got for an intro about myself. So.
Yeah, maybe you can say a few words what kinds of applications you're currently doing with those tools.
Yeah. So a lot of the use cases tend to fall along the lines of helping out to automate customer service, helping out with if people want to check on their orders for a more retail type client, or if people want to, file a claim, or there's a lot of insurance, those kinds of things that.
And how could it be used personally?
How could it be used personally? I think it's a way, something that at Pipestream we like to do. Oh, thanks, Sal. Something that at Pipestream that a lot of times as new hires we do is people will build intro bots. So that's sort of almost like this concept of a digital alter ego, where it's kind of just a tool to interact with and learn information about yourself in a way that's maybe more interesting than reading a resume or something like that. So I think that's where, when you move away from kind of a very businessy use case and move into more about what the possibilities could be personally or as a way of interfacing with someone, I think that's where it gets interesting. But it looks like my slides are finally up, so great. Okay, so before I started talking about more of the kind of technical building blocks or main components of conversational AI, I first wanted to just level set on what it is, what it's not within the field of AI. I think since AI is such a hot topic and it's in all these headlines, there's some kind of it's good to spend some time to kind of divide out what the different kinds are. So conversational AI specifically refers to virtual speech-based assistants, which you might know colloquially as chatbots, that communicate or that automate communication at scale. And the way they do so is with a combination of natural language understanding and simple rules-based approaches. They can be either text or voice enabled. You have probably interacted with both varieties, where it's either you're typing in a chat online or you're on the phone with conversational AI. It can be a combination. There are solutions where you're on the phone, but then like a link gets texted to you and you continue the interaction via text. So there's a lot of different ways you can interact with it. And it can serve different purposes depending on the goal or the use case that you're trying to accomplish. So it can automate transactions and, in some of those insurance use cases, for instance, where there's kind of a series of transactions that a lot of different people need to do. It can guide people through the steps to do that. It can be educational, kind of, hey, here's how to navigate this website, and here's FAQs on this topic, and let me point you in the right direction. And it can even be communicative and social, all depending on how it fits into your overall goal or what you're building. But in my experience, the best use cases are those which involve interactions or transactions that happen a lot. They're predictable and they go down a finite number of paths, because that allows us to kind of build out almost a decision tree of like, here's all the ways this could go down, and for each of these ways, here's the conversation that should happen, here's the information that should be shared and whatnot, rather than kind of a conversational AI where you could get really any kind of human input, in which case it's hard to respond appropriately if your scope is really, really wide. And at the bottom, I kind of just have some logos that you might recognize as far as players in the field. So, Siri is a big one. Alexa is a big one. There's IBM Watson, there's Nuance, there's Pipestream. And there's a lot of kind of both really established larger tech organizations as well as interesting startups doing work in this field. So next slide. Okay. I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the as is, where conversational AI is as a field or as an offering at large. I should say that these statistics maybe should, given the general economic slowdown happening, I'm not sure these predictions might be a bit optimistic, but it's we're yet to see kind of the overall role that AI and conversational AI can and should take within this time. So it's definitely an interesting landscape. But in general, it seems like interest is really strong, both amongst businesses and consumers. AI is certainly trendy, and a lot of companies are interested in exploring how they can incorporate it into their processes, how it can change the world for better. But the technology itself still has a ways to go. I mean, we've come a long way, and there's certainly a lot of really incredible things that AI can do. But we have, our sights are high, and there's still work left to kind of build this out into what we really want it to be. And actual implementation, as far as clients and businesses incorporating it into their processes, is lagging a bit behind interest, simply because it can be hard to know where best to fit AI. People are interested in it, but it's like, where do I need this? Where can this fit within? That wouldn't require us to re-engineer a lot of processes that we already have. And also kind of a requirement to build out robust artificial intelligence is a lot of data that's clean, things that are well documented. You need data for a certain period of time, and that isn't always available all the time. But nonetheless, Outgrow predicted that by 2020, by the end of this year, 80% of businesses would have some form of chatbot automation. Currently, or I think at the end of 2019, less than 50% of companies actually had incorporated that. As far as how users feel about it, it's kind of half and half. Some users would prefer to communicate with a live agent just to get their answers right away and not have to deal with the chatbot. Others, don't want to wait on the phone for a long time, and they prefer an immediate answer when shopping online. So it's roughly half and half that way. And Caravan reported that about 70% of millennials report positive experiences on the whole, but less than half actually think they provide better service than a human agent. And currently we see chatbots most frequently built out in the healthcare, telecom, and banking industries. That seems to be where there's those industries kind of are really trying to work that in. So before I go into the actual concepts, are there any questions? I should have mentioned at the beginning, but feel free to interrupt me at any point or put questions in the chat. I will.
Sophia,
Yes.
Anna Tavis here. It
Sure.
seems that this crisis we're living through is only going to accelerate the development of chatbots. Just think if this was already in place, if all of those unemployment claims were coming in. But what happened, because the system was not set up for the volume, unprecedented volume of unemployment claims, and we are where we are. People can't get through, and I think it seems to be happening everywhere. And what a great opportunity for this technology to kick in and really provide a much better experience for people who are going through a lot of stressful days in their lives.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that's a big sentiment right now within the community, and I think a lot of businesses are seeing why this could be really helpful in this time. And right now, it's just a question of, like, at right this moment, companies cannot necessarily prioritize like these projects. They're too busy, fighting to the next day. But I'm hoping that when things calm down a little bit and we're back on our feet a little bit as a society, then we can, and when we start the work of, how are we going to rebuild stronger? How are we going to fix all the problems that this exposed? The question of where AI could fit into that landscape is going to become a really relevant one.
But just one last thing, not to distract.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for, like you say, the community, the conversational AI community, to step up rather than wait for businesses to come to you? And when things settle down, we don't know when that is going to happen, and people need help now. Is there an opportunity to be more proactive about it?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think what's lacking is data. Like, you need access to a lot of training data. And that's really what would be the roadblock, I think, to just getting something up and running.
But we can see later one of the examples of that application kind of being nimble, and the crisis management chatbot that Francesco built and deployed and integrates with the World Health Organization data and gives you very quickly a percentage risk for you to be impacted or experience death as a result of the corona infection. So it's basic example of how you can do something literally in a weekend to build it out and give some basic information to people. And obviously for the more advanced features and functionality, you do need to spend more quality time with the data and build that knowledge base.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. And then I guess the question becomes how to distribute it, how to spread it throughout communities and let people know that, you know, this resource exists. But yeah, that's certainly something I think we're all trying to think about, like how this technology can be of use in this time. But cool. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go into some of the key concepts that define the construction of a chatbot, essentially. So chatbot training tends to break down into intents, entities, dialogue, and context. So I'll start at intents. Intents roughly map to actions that users want to perform or use cases that you want your solution to be capable of handling. So I have an example here about kind of how you might want to think about training something like a chatbot that helps users enroll in health benefits through their employer or something like that. So an example intent for this use case might be enroll benefits. So that's one kind of discrete thing that users are coming to the chatbot trying to do. And the way these intents are trained is you essentially gather about 40. There isn't like a magic number, but generally the more training data you have, the better. I like to gather about 40 example user utterances, which are just various ways that users can express that intent that they have. So for our enroll benefits intent, it might be, you know, I wanted to enroll in benefits. Where do I go to sign up for healthcare? How do I get dental coverage? I need help signing up for benefits. And the goal here is to kind of cast as wide of a net as you can to come up with as wide a variety as possible of potential ways people could express this. Because you know, there's a lot of different ways to talk about things in general, and especially when you get into solutions that are, you know, across several regions or like across even different countries, there's different vocabulary that gets used, and you want to make sure that that's captured. And a quick note about notation here. The notation of a hashtag and an @ here and $signs in the context section, that's notation that gets used at IBM. That's where I picked it up. It's not across the entire industry, but I find it useful as a way to distinguish at a glance whether you're talking about an intent or an entity. So I've used it throughout this presentation. But yeah, that's intents. Then entities, we can define as nouns or keywords that help to narrow down a user's goals. So within an intent, you might have, you know, within the overall goal of enrolling in benefits, you might have certain keywords that users use that help you to narrow down specifically what they're trying to do. So I have this example of coverage type. So you might have, and coverage type is an entity type. So the general schema is you have types of entities which contain multiple, or at least one, but it can be multiple, and those in turn have synonyms. So if we have an entity type, which is we're calling coverage type, you might have 3 entities within that category: health, dental, and vision. And then each of those might have synonyms. So different ways people might be getting at talking about dental benefits, whether that's dentist, dental care, dental provider, orthodontist, like root canal, like it can be, you know, anything that you think should map back to that specific goal that they have. So going back to our example, like if people said, I want to enroll in benefits, I want to enroll in dental benefits, I want to enroll in vision benefits, those all map back to the same intent. But that additional keyword helps you determine specifically what kind of action they're trying to do within that overall category. And then dialogue is the actual responses.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm so sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
no
I wanted to
worries.
ask a question here.
Go for it.
So, as in when you were talking about intents, you said that you try to deal with the various kinds of ways that a question can be asked, especially because it's a globalized world today.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not everybody would have a good grammar, right? I mean, in the Western world and English-speaking countries, people might write inexact grammar. But if you go to Eastern side, it may not be so good. So how do you deal with that?
The great thing about the models that typically are used, that are trained for chatbots, is they don't pay attention to grammar as such. Like, they're not trying to make sure that your sentence is grammatical in the sense of like a school teacher telling you that's not a grammatical sentence. So it's really, you have enough training data, and it really gets a sense of what the keywords are, of what the general combinations of words are. So you could say enroll benefits, and you would arrive at the same intent, even though that's not a fully fledged grammatical sentence. So grammar shouldn't be a problem at all, and even spelling generally isn't a problem as long as it's close enough. There's a kind of a technology that is used called fuzzy matching, which is like if the word that a user puts in isn't a real word, but it's a certain number of, like, it has a certain similarity with a word that is real that we know about, then we're going to say that's correct. So if someone typed in dental and got 2 letters wrong, we might still say, like, oh, that looks close enough to dental that we're going to assume this person wanted to say dental. So in that way, we can account for, a wide variety of grammatical and spelling differences in human input.
So can you define what amount of fuzziness you want, or is it something preset?
Fuzzy matching is really just a general strategy more than it is like a specific tool that gets used. So different you can just kind of implement it yourself, in which case you can define it however way you want it to be defined. Different or conversational AI platforms, I imagine, have different ways of going about it, whether that's like a hard-coded platform level thing where you can't manipulate it, or whether you can manipulate it in each solution. There's generally best practices around, like, you don't want, like, the number of letters of difference that you're going to accept should be kind of proportional to the length of the word. So if you're saying, like, you can have up to 2 letters off, it wouldn't really make sense if someone, typed in a 3-letter word, and it's like, you'd be saying like cat and bot are the same word where they're clearly not. So there's like a set of best practices around it. But so I don't mean to get into the weeds about fuzzy matching, but yeah, suffice it to say that there's a level of customizability as far as how much you're gonna, what range of spelling variation you're gonna accept, I guess, in your bot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So I was talking about dialogue, which refers to the actual responses that are provided to users by the chatbot, that you see on the front end as you're talking to it, the message bubbles essentially. And dialogue, typically, they tend to be, well, there's multiple ways of doing it. So they can be conditionals, where you're saying, like, hey, if you recognize this intent and this entity in the same utterance, then say this thing. So for instance, if our bot recognizes enroll benefits intent and the vision coverage type in the same sentence, we can deduct that the user of the chatbot is interested in enrolling in vision benefits. So we can say, hey, if you recognize these 2 things, say this. Say, it sounds like you'd like to enroll in vision benefits. I'd be happy to help. And this is kind of the NLU approach to dialogue. You can also just have it be based on a series of rules. Like, you know, maybe after this message, it sounds like you'd like to enroll in vision benefits, the next message gives them a link, and that's just a rule you're setting on the back end. That link isn't triggered by NLU necessarily. It's just after we say this next. So there's places where you want to, there's examples where you want to do it based on NLU, and there's examples where it's better to just have like a logic that you implement on the back end. Like, this is where we're going to go next, regardless of what the person said.
Sophia, you mentioned the NLU, natural language understanding.
Yes.
Would you like to explain a little bit more what that is?
Yes. Yeah, NLU stands for natural language understanding. It's sort of just a catch-all acronym that I use to refer to this sort of like AI responding based on what people are actually saying approach. So yeah, I don't know, is that enough? Sorry. Okay, and then lastly, there's context variables. So this category to me kind of encompasses any information that you store and use later, or kind of any logic that's happening as far as communicating with backend systems or manipulating variables. You can use it just for personalization, for instance. So if you ask someone up front, what's your name? They tell it to you, then you can save that and then bring it up later on down the flow. If I say my name is Sophia, then later on, if the chatbot asks me to provide some other information, the response can be, thanks for providing that, Sophia. Next, I need your phone number. And that kind of just adds a nice personal touch. It can be a bit more complex when you get into integrating with different systems, as Stella mentioned, like Spotify or any kind of business internal systems. All that communication that happens between the chatbot and the system, and all that information that goes back and forth, I kind of put that in the context / variables category in this approach. So yeah, so those are the sort of basic building blocks that are involved in building out conversational AI. This is a little bit about the workflow, I think, or kind of how I like to go about actually designing a conversation flow out of those building blocks. So typically it helps to visualize it and get it down as a tree, essentially, where you are plotting out all the different directions that your conversation could take you in depending on user input. So here at the top, I have kind of 4 intents or 4 basic use cases that this chatbot is going to handle. So users might have questions about benefits. They might want to enroll in benefits. They might want to check on their claim, or they might want to appeal a claim. This is just a couple of examples, and these are intents that we would have trained on. So, you know, let's say that users or that our solution recognizes a certain intent. You know, then what happens? Then is it always going to be the same response? Is the response going to differ based on additional entities that were recognized in the utterance? You know, do we need to ask additional questions to get more information from the user to determine which direction to send them down? So this all gets captured in here, and it's a good way to sort of map out all the different possibilities and have them in your head. Typically, I wouldn't have all of the upper level use cases like this on the same tree, just because it can get a little overwhelming when you have all your message bubbles and everything in there. So I like to split them out to kind of keep it clean. But yeah, so I typically have the chatbot responses in these blue boxes. And then if you go over to the right side, we can start thinking about kind of, if we need to ask the user information, what kind of information we're going to store, like what we need to keep from them, and where that information needs to be used later down the line. So for instance, maybe I need the user's name, and then I also need their date of birth. So I store this information as name and date of birth. And then using that, I can potentially send it over to the account management system to pull up their account and say like, hey, I've pulled up your information. It looks like your benefits enrollment is X, Y, and Z. So that way we can have, you know, we don't have to ask them every single time. We can just use this information down the line wherever we might need it. And, oh, sorry, can you go back? Sorry about that. Yeah, so I like to use, well, Visio is a good tool to do this in. Draw.io is a good free tool to do this in. So typically it's good to have this documentation particularly if you're working with multiple people, or you have, you know, a group of stakeholders or something that you need to show this to and say, here's my proposed design for my solution. It kind of keeps it clean and easy to read. For me, if I'm building something that I'm the only one who needs to look at, I just like to do it on paper, because I think it's easier to just get your ideas out that way. But it really comes down to how, you know, what your personal preferences are as far as mapping out these diagrams.
So I want to make sure we have enough time for Francesco's portion as well. So if there's a way to speed up through the rest, that'll be great.
Yes. Sorry about that. This is just a little bit about the workflow, which the main idea is that it's iterative. So you develop your training data. It's great to use real training data if you have it, but if not, you can sort of make it up just as a POC. You build it out, you deploy, you test it. You're like, hey, are we getting the right response for this utterance? Are people going down the right tree? Are our integrations working right? If no, you fix it, deploy it again. So it just goes on and on and on, and it's going to keeps going through. The idea is really just to keep versioning it out as additional people get in there and test it out. You can go next. Okay. And lastly, I just had a couple of best practices, both for development and user experience. As far as development, it's good to consider, the main thing is really considering the happy paths and the unhappy paths. So, you know, when you're building it, you know how it's supposed to work if it works, but you also want to make sure that if it doesn't work, user experiences are still kind of graceful and they're not frustrating. So kind of allowing users, or allowing your bot to fail gracefully. You know, how many times are you going to retry to get someone's name before you say like, hey, this isn't working, would you like to speak with a live representative? How many times are you going to try to understand the user's intent until you know, you're upfront about that? So I think that's important, and because failure is going to happen. Your chatbot can't accommodate every single use case that people might come to it with. So that's an important one. Testing with different groups is really important, because if you're doing it all by yourself, you might miss things. A big one for me that is maybe counterintuitive actually is that not everything has to be AI or NLU. Like I had a solution in the past where we were trying to use NLU for people saying yes. And sometimes it's easier just to have a button, because, you know, we were hearing it wrong and we weren't routing it directly. It might be easier just have a button where people click yes. So kind of trying to think where can we really benefit from using NLU to address this, or where is it better just to like give people a menu. And then on the user experience side, I think it's important to be honest that you're not, you know, your chatbot is not a human being. Don't try to fool people into thinking it is. Like, hey, you know, I'm Spotify's virtual assistant. How can I help you? That kind of thing it's generally better to be transparent about it. Keep responses short and succinct. It's good to direct the user, you know, rather than just saying, how can I help you? Saying, I can do these 3 things. Which of these would you like help with? Just so they have an idea of what they can ask you about and what they can't. And then lastly, considering the personality of your virtual agent and how that feeds into the goal you're trying to accomplish. You know, is it more professional? Is it more friendly? Is it playful? That all plays a role in kind of the development you're going to go through.
Excellent.
Yeah. Sorry that I went over. My apologies, Francesco.
It's a lot of great content, and I think these are foundational elements of understanding what then you can do with it. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
Thank you.
And Francesco, take it away.
Okay, so let me give you a little preface. I'm going to talk about why people should consider having a personal chatbot. Okay, this has more to do about your personal life than actually your business life. then eventually it's your decision how much of this experience you want to transfer into your business life. And also because I'm originally from Florence, Italy, I take things very personal. I like things, there is a certain level of passion about what I do in life and so on. So when the reason why I got into this business was simply because back in 2011, I started financing the construction of 13 classrooms in Afghanistan. And 3 years down the road, the Afghan government took control of those classrooms away from me, leaving me with about 30,000 or tens of thousands of young students in the west of Afghanistan, which I couldn't communicate with. The reason why I built those classrooms was simply for social responsibility, to empower young women to be financially self-efficient with digital literacy. And basically make money, learn how to make money, writing blogs and providing content produced in that region, so that there wouldn't be just like one Malala who gets shot, but thousands of young women that can actually report and making the bad guys a difficult time. When right in 2014, IBM Watson purchased, IBM purchased SoftLayer, and our company, we found ourselves with a freebie that is the access of IBM Watson. And that's when we decided basically to start this, this venture of transferring our know-how as education from what we did in the classrooms into chatbots, okay? So let me share with you now my screen so I tell you a little bit about my chatbot story right here. So this is my life, all right? And first of all of you guys might have to consider, how do you analyze your life, all right? How do you structure your life in this matter, all right? So this is my life from a chatbot perspective. Let me show you how LinkedIn, for example, sees my life. You know, it gives me a picture here. I can put another picture here. Is the Ponte Vecchio in Florence. Stay home, guys. I have a little, you know, write up about who I am, and then a bunch of information, my blogs and so on. And it's a content flow. It's classic. I don't know anything what people do here. Maybe I can get notification of who visited my chatbot, my LinkedIn profile, but that's about it. I don't know the details, where they clicked, what they did exactly, unless they reach out to me. So this is one approach. Another approach of how to do it is how Wikipedia does. That's my Wikipedia page. I did a lot of things in my life. The interesting thing about Wikipedia is basically the publications, everything that speaks about you, the references basically are what is the real meat into this, the content, and then that allows the editors to build the content on top of it, right? Including some charming little picture on the right side. So, but this is still not a way for me to get better feedback and also to learn anything, all right? So what I do here now, let me move this around. So what I did, I transformed my entire life into a chatbot. Let me put some real-time numbers here. So here on this side is all my philanthropic work, all right? So if I zoom in, I will see, for example, from here, that 15% of people are interested in my philanthropy work, okay? If I go to the left, let's scroll here. When I'm on Zoom, it's a little bit slower. So I will see that, for example, business entertains the interest of 28% of the people that come visit my personal self, all right? And then here's my personal life, in which I kind of made a decision to break down my personal life into my favorite sports, that is sailing and judo, ventures with notable people. I have been in New York for 30 years, so I have run into a lot of interesting characters. My parents, in which you can actually, through this, learn more about my parents if you speak Italian, or check out my mom's cookbooks. My business relationship with John Malkovich when we had our clothing line. And then also you can contribute to me, providing me some questions about something else, and I get a feedback off of that, right? that allows me to learn what people want to learn more about my personal life. So this is a way for me to break down certain parts of my life and create this compelling chatbot. Then here you have inspiration, here you have other stuff, right? If we go down here, then I use a technology from IBM Watson that is, I measure sentiment and emotion of people. Now, when you are on LinkedIn, Facebook, all those platforms, unless you are getting into some strange environment, people usually are very positive. They always tell you how great you are or how their life is fantastic. My reality is slightly different, all right? So my chatbot, when people talk to my chatbot, and let me clarify, I'm not famous, but a small number of people go there every month. It's 350 people, and they spend an average of 6 minutes. So that's 2,100 minutes average. That saves me 35 hours of my personal life to talk about selling or whatever I do for business or what, or what I do in philanthropy. But when they tell me what's in their mind, I measure 10% of anger, 8% of disgust, 10% of fear, 40% of joy, 22% of sadness, and the 10% of undetermined. Now, as a statistic, I heard in the United States, for example, depression affects 20% of people in the country. So the 22% of sadness might be in line with that, right? I'm not a psychologist or not a psychiatrist. But it gives you a little bit an idea of how different this is from my content flow on LinkedIn, for example, all right? And it gives some truth to the matter, all right? Then there is another aspect of this, in which is the natural language understanding. That is this little section here. So let me open it up, all right? When we started this process, my team, they kind of set it up for me in the NLU because I needed some help on this. So we decided from this point here to this point here, there are about 35 intents. And those are conversations. How old are you? What you like to eat? Where did you grow up? Where do you live? What do you do for a living? And that's how we went live. And I really thought it was going to be compelling. Then I started getting people talk to my digital self, in which they started asking me questions in which I was not prepared to answer. Like, for example, because I'm a judo guy, I have cauliflower ears, all right? So people ask me, why do you have funny ears? Well, then I had to explain it, all right? Or, for example, what's my favorite music? Or what do you think about New York? And so on. And all this stuff started flying into this chatbot, providing me the opportunity, not so much to tell people about me, but to learn off of what they were interested in. And that's exactly what I wanted out of artificial intelligence, and not just a tool to brag about how great I am and whatever it is, but actually the opposite. To get those guys ask me questions that I couldn't answer so that I can pressure test my knowledge on a digital level, but also on a personal level, so that I could contribute with some word of wisdom coming to the other side, right? So this is like the digital self I am right here. Like, that's actually me in Locarno when I used to represent the film festival of Locarno. So Francesco is back. Hi. Let's do this, and I show you. So there are 4 ways in which I decided to define myself, all right? So first of all, I leave you the opportunity to tell me what's on your mind. So if you click here, I'm basically calling, in this case, the IBM Watson platform. Here I explain the purpose in which I'm asking you what's on your mind, and I will use AI to measure your sentiments. So for example, if I say, I am miserable, all right? Oops, sorry. Let's see what this says. So Watson is telling me that you feel sad. I'm sorry about this, all right? And that's an example of how in a very simplistic way, all right? So you can articulate a longer conversation and everything else. Now, not to get wrong, Watson can make mistakes, all right? So nothing is perfect. There are ways to ask that question in which, you know, it could be different and misinterpreted. So it's always good also to know how to train the system when it comes to sentiments and emotions. Then from here, if you want to learn more about me, it brings you into the the section where there is some deterministic questions in which basically it's personal, philanthropy, inspiration, blockchain, business, my secrets, and how to get in touch. All right, those are deterministic, and which I was showing you before, the personal. Or you can go back into asking me an open question, and we'll do that later, all right? So I did choose a lot of buttons. And maybe, you know, actually this morning I was thinking maybe I should remove blockchain and crypto and just stick it in there somewhere, but I can't make my mind if I want it to be personal or business. So I just leave it there for now. And this is a conscious analysis of how I use AI on a personal level to basically broadcast who I am, right? If I decided to go into personal here, then I have another deterministic tree of questions. What I do actually, this is a new little tool I enjoy. I'm telling the person who chose personal of what's the percentage of selections that has been done by other people. So in this case, not only you're learning something of me, but also you're learning that, for example, another 11% of people were interested in the last 30 days in personal and 22% in philanthropy and volunteering. All right, that's only the 30 days. In the back end I was showing you before, it's for the whole time. And from here, you can choose different options like judo, John Malkovich and I, sailing, my parents, adventures with notable people, right? So let's go sailing here. And if you do into sailing, it will show you a little bit of background of my sailing, why I do sailing. I mostly compete. And so on. All right, so it's an introduction, including a video in which there is a video of I think one of our sailing races that we did with my kids. All right, so let's say, what's your favorite sport? I ask you, you might say tennis. I do a little bit of learning off of this conversation, and now I'm back to would you like to learn more about me? And now we go here and ask a question. So this is the NLU side in which we are leaving deterministic concept outside, and we go here. So Stella, would you like to ask me a question?
Sure. What do you dream at night?
So what do you dream at night? All right, here is actually a fantastic question. Let's see what it says. So now it's talking to IBM Watson, in which I train. There had been a conversation probably before about dreams, and here I show you a little bit of what I dream at night, okay? So, would you like to proceed to my secret section? Maybe we can avoid that. Do you want to proceed to, I say no. And let's go back here. Let's ask another, a second question. You want?
What is your least favorite food?
All right, so what is your least favorite food? All right, let's see if there is an answer for this. So, you know, ironically, I don't like apples, and I live in the Big Apple. So anyway, I also explain here that I became a vegetarian after watching the Game Changers, blah, 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 okay? So I think my computer is listening to me and is making little mistakes, all right? So to repeat, could you consider starting when? No, not sure. Let's do that another time. So now let's go into another, opportunity here. So let's say you ask something, I'll make a question I know that, and my IBM Watson setup doesn't know how to answer, all right? How far is the moon? all right? So I know for a fact I don't know this, all right? And I didn't program an answer for this. And, you know, I actually program an answer for stuff that obviously I don't know how to answer. So Mamma Mia seems like you're trying to tease me. So that's one approach. Now, we can also ask questions in which I didn't program, and sometimes things happen. Like, for example, what do you think about Saudi Arabia? All right. So a gentleman came to my office, asked this chatbot this question, and this was the answer. I usually prefer not to discuss religion and politics. I'm fascinated by different cultures and traditions. I programmed this answer for something else. So if you are asking me a political or a religious question, I was going to answer this. So IBM Watson associated those two things.
Francesca, I want to be mindful of the time, and we're literally 2 minutes away from the end of the class. Is there a specific set of instructions that we can give to the students before I show what the homework is? Because we will have the opportunity to continue playing with it next session as well.
So you guys can go to Querlo.com. You can actually create an account. It's free. You write test for NYU. And you can actually, if you have an account with IBM Watson, you can actually put your primary keys right here, secondary key, or with Microsoft Lewis, and use NLU. You can actually here customize the way that your chatbot will look like. Let me add a picture here. Where is it here? Documents and downloads. See if I find the picture. And I move a few things around here. So, okay, here. That's actually a picture I took in Florence. And then the chatbot is created. And then you can start working on the tree of conversation. Here, for example, you can do add the question, your question. Let's say here. Oops. Oops, let me refresh the page a sec. Your question. What do you prefer? Multiple choice. I will now show the sentiment and emotion because we will do it next week, correct? So you answer, you can say, I don't know, I prefer pizza. Pasta. And then there's their classic tiramisu. All right. If you don't like tiramisu, you're dangerous. And then obviously, if you like pizza, I maybe gonna connect to another chat and bring you, and we can go have dinner together. And that's it. And then here, basically, you have here an example of how the chatbot was created in a few seconds. You customize the picture and so on.
And Francesco, you have instructions on the website, right, for people to watch videos step by step how this works, right?
Yes,
so
you go to Querlo.com and there is a section called documentation, and you can see everything there, and and so on. Makes sense?
Perfect. Perfect. Makes sense. So let me take half a minute to wrap up and share what's going on in the next session.
Okay, so let me remove my share here. I do this.
Now we'll have the opportunity next session to continue working on this, and the homework for everybody is to create a profile on Querlo. You saw how quickly it is to do it, and try to experiment and build your digital alter ego. All right, describe your life in the chatbot, and then share the results of your chatbot on Slack community. We created the Build a Chatbot channel there. So you can then share with others, and we will monitor. If you have questions, we'll try to answer them. And if not, bring them to the next session. Next session is going to be April 9, the same time, 5 to 6. Please register for it. We will go through what you've learned and your questions, as well as we'll learn more how you integrate with Watson technology the way Francesca was showing you. And then start thinking what other topics you would like to learn during this session so we can start planning the programming after April. And then, of course, brag and share away with your friends the fact that you built a chatbot. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see each other next Thursday.
Thank you very much. That was
everyone.
great.
Thank you. That was really good. That was really good.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Just
Thank you.
one small question. Can we get a copy of these slides?
Yes. We'll post them all in the Slack group.